All right, welcome back to the tangent. We're back again with Artie, and then the normal guys.
Yep.
This is a part two.
This is part two of our wrestling. So, in the first part, we talked a lot about how we got into it, and then we talked a little bit about some of the eras that I watched. I should say more than anything else.
We did a lot of behind the scenes leading up through the Attitude Era.
Right.
Yeah,
so now that's going to lead into where Artie, which is why Artie's here. He didn't talk a whole lot the last one, but we're going to lead into a lot more why Artie's here. So Artie still watches.
Oh, yeah.
Devin still watches. And Tim and I don't really watch anymore.
I just said in the green room. I know Xavier would because he plays D&D and I'm into D&D.
What's with an S?
Yeah.
Look.
Yeah. Anyway, it just reminded me of something I got to talk to you about later.
But it's about D&D.
Yes.
Okay. And then the female wrestlers, the divas, because we have
They're not called divas anymore.
I don't care what they're called. There's an especially hot selection of them these days.
That's not PC anymore, right?
Well, and the thing is that,
Look,
I mean, the female...
They're especially hot these days, and I don't want to start calling them random things, so what do you call them?
Wrestlers.
Yeah, they're just wrestlers now. Anyway,
Piss breaks.
we're going to go into... Let's get started. So, I have a few questions.
You can't talk about how you're in the bathroom every time you see a female wrestler.
Yeah,
I have a few questions for Devin.
Insinuate inappropriate things.
For Devin and Artie, that's really going to kick off this podcast. This episode of the podcast. One is, what keeps you watching right now? I'm gonna go ahead and ask Artie first.
Pretty much all the storylines leading up to it, the more action, building off of each other. I don't know if we're going to talk about it yet, but AEW.
Yeah.
We'll get into AEW.
Seeing what the old unused WWE superstars, what they can do when they have some creative control and freedom.
Yeah, I was going to say, based on the way that it's been described to me, at this point, like when I was talking earlier about how WCW didn't use their new talent, it sounds like that's what WWE is doing now.
Yeah,
they're just not using their new talent enough.
They've become very, very similar to...
So, same question to Devin. What keeps you watching now?
Well, I would say for me, it's just the sheer fact that over the years, there is so much that I know about wrestling that I don't think there's ever a point where I'm going to be able to exit.
Nope.
Okay, and now you've tried your hand at actual wrestling.
I have.
So, what do you find was probably the hardest thing to do while you're in the... That is a hard question. So, like, everybody understands that wrestling is scripted.
Yeah.
We all know this. We all know that there's a script there.
For the most part, for the broad strokes, there are random occasions where they do go into, like, we don't exactly know who's going to win. We're going to test, like, crowd reactions. The ref will say things like, "This is who's supposed to win."
What I'm saying is, like,
figuring out as you
storylines
are
scripted.
There was that big one where Vince screwed someone out of the title. They were supposed to win, and then
it was the Montreal screw job or whatever.
It was Bret Hart, right?
Yeah, Bret Hart got screwed because.
But anyway,
so here's the thing. Is for someone who's tried their hand at being in the ring, and everybody's like, it's all fake anyway. How fake do you feel it really is being in the ring?
Being in the ring part is, it's kind of like, so taking a bump, just like say, you throw me into the rope, I come back, and then you just knock into me with your shoulder, and I fall and bump on my back. Imagine getting rear-ended by somebody going like 25 miles an hour.
Yeah,
that's what a bump feels like. So the first time that happens, holy crap, if you don't do it right, it hurts. It hurts very badly, and so, like, there's a science to it, which is what makes it more than just the storyline part of it. You have to know how to do it correctly to not be hurt.
Which is something.
It's like learning judo. You gotta learn how to take a fall in order to not hurt yourself.
And the science of taking the is exactly the same.
Right.
Distributing your force and things like that.
Something else that we've discussed in the past, which is you kind of got me back into wrestling for a minute, and I just kind of lost interest for a minute. But the thing is that you were telling me the technical side of the wrestling aspect game.
Yeah, how things
work. like how when certain moves are done, it's not all on one person. It's both people have to do this move, and the person taking the move has to learn how to sell it. So I'm going to throw out a name of somebody that when I was watching, he may not be as prolific of a wrestler now, but Scott Ziggler.
Scott Ziggler.
Dolph Ziggler.
Scott Ziggler.
I don't know where Scott came from, but Dolph Ziggler. Yep. When I used to watch Dolph take hits, it was some of the coolest stuff I'd ever seen.
He made everything look like it was ridiculous. Like he was getting concussed by every shot. And some of them he was getting concussed. But
and then Ric Flair's also another one that was great at taking a beating.
You asked me, and we kind of just skipped over it, what the hardest part about it is. Like, honestly, surprisingly enough, and like I'm not trying to like bury the physical aspect of it, that wasn't the hardest part for me. The hardest part for me is like, so they teach you how to take the bumps, and then once you know how to do it properly, they're like, okay, now sell, and now add psychology, and all. That's the hard part. You know, so like you're teaching yourself how to throw yourself on the ground. You get used to it. You're doing it, and now I have to remember. Oh, this is supposed to hurt like a motherfucker. So now I gotta sell it. You know, and what part of me hurts? You know, and you're trying to continue to tell the story to the crowd
without
words. Some of the weirdest like in my opinion bad sells for things like that was. Anytime I saw like they're supposed to act like they're hurt and they're holding the wrong part of themselves, as opposed to what I would think would hurt,
and that was really hard.
I remember like when we talked earlier about Chris Benoit when they were talking like when they did like the Canadian crossface, you know, the crippler crossface is it they eventually called it
the crippler crossface,
and they had to make that big deal about how it actually hurts your shoulder and not anything else, even though it looks like it's supposed to crank your neck. So, you know, anytime they would start holding their shoulder, for a while I didn't get it until they made a big deal about how it's supposed to hurt your shoulder.
It can.
So until the announcers started doing that and they started putting it in his intro video,
right?
Like the weird X-rays of like broken arms and things, I just didn't get it. So to me it was a bad sell until they explained it.
Right. Well, and then there was other wrestlers with similar moves that. It's just depending upon where they fold their arm, the opponent's arm. Doesn't Cena have a move that's very similar to it?
The STF.
Which three?
I think there was one other person too that I can't think of.
His sixth finisher.
Yeah. But anyway, you're right. It's like if they can't sell, they can't tell what hurts.
Yeah.
The other thing that we had talked about in the past was like. Back in the day, Golden Age wrestling, you would have wrestlers that worked on one part of the body.
Yeah.
The leg or the neck or the back. So that when they finish the match with their finisher completed
that what they were working on.
Right.
Yeah.
So Flair was really big about working on a knee.
Yeah, because his finisher is figure
four leg lock.
Yeah.
Which, if you've ever been put in a figure four leg lock, yes, it does hurt.
Like crazy bad.
A lot of the submission finishers are some of them are based off of actual submission.
Yes.
And if you crank them, they hurt because that's what they're supposed to do.
Oh, the other one I was thinking of was CM Punk. Didn't CM Punk have a
Anaconda Vice? Yeah,
but that's a little different.
It's way different.
But he had that good finisher.
Arm attack.
Yeah, he had that good submission too. But he was known for the
GTS.
The GTS. That's what I was looking for. But that was a cool ass move though.
But yeah, for me the hardest part was the psychology in the selling, in the continuing to tell the story rather than just the physical part, because you have to do that. Otherwise, nobody's gonna care.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, again, part of them, you know, teaching you how to do the things, you're focused on doing it right and making sure you're not hurting yourself, and then once you know how to do it without freaking killing yourself, like, okay, it still hurts. Like I said, it's basically the equivalent of getting rear-ended at 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, so then there was something else I was going to talk to actually both of you guys about, was they do get hurt in the ring.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
I mean, all the time. We talk about people getting concussions, and I think the three of us were watching a video at work
earlier this week, yeah.
And I asked you whose fault that was. And I don't remember what happened. I just remember that he landed on his neck wrong.
Somebody with a history of neck and concussion issues got dropped on their freaking neck.
It was Daniel Bryan.
Even, like, so, like, if somebody who knows, you know, how to do things right and the whatever, I've been watching for 15 plus years, you know, so, like, there's points in time where I'm watching and I know, like, oh crap, that hurt, like, really badly, that hurt, or that wasn't supposed to happen, or, you know, this person could be legitimately injured. And that was something, it happened this past Sunday on a pay-per-view where Daniel Bryan got dropped on his neck, and, like, I couldn't tell if, like, are they trying to make it look like, you know, that was an accident, or, like, it flabbergasted me.
Well, and then you said there's
his neck. I thought he was dead.
And then you said something. You said something about maybe he was trying to do something else.
Yeah, the way it looked like is the person that got dropped on their head looks like he was trying to reverse the move and land on his feet, but he didn't get a full rotation. So I would say that isn't anybody's fault. It's just something that happened. But maybe they were trying to just do an uber freaking nasty bump.
Accidents happen in the ring. A lot of them. We'll talk about the big accident that happened.
Now that I'm thinking about it, there's a lot of broken necks.
Yeah, well,
I mean, Brock Lesnar broke his neck. Stone Cold broke his neck in the ring.
Well, so the fun fact about that match with Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, when Brock Lesnar did a shooting star press, which is a forward backflip off the top rope to Kurt Angle, was Kurt Angle's neck was broken already. When the match was beginning, like, he was going into that show with a broken neck.
Yes.
And then Brock broke his neck during the match by trying to do the shooting star press.
Well, we'll talk about the one big accident that happened before a match even started.
You're talking about Owen Hart?
Yeah, we're talking about the Blue Blazer or Owen Hart.
Yeah,
Owen
Hart, Blue Blazer.
They tried to do something that they shouldn't have done. Or they tried to do something and it wasn't really checked properly.
It was something that they have done. They had done it plenty of times before with other stars and with Owen.
Because that's how he always entered the ring.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they've done it several times afterwards too. Some of the things that are similar.
Yeah,
where they basically just lowered him from the rafters.
Yeah, I thought he was ziplining down.
Well, he wasn't comfortable doing it in the first place. Is the big ordeal that they're having right now.
Because I thought that he was ziplining down and the zipline broke and he fell.
Yeah. I'll let Artie take this one.
Yeah, he apparently, from what his wife said, he was begging Vince. He didn't want to do it, and that was the whole ordeal of why it was so horrible that it happened. Because he said, well, I don't even want to practice it because I'm scared of heights. I don't want to do it. So I'll do it once and it'll be over.
Wow,
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know all that. That's crazy. And what happened was he was ziplining into the ring, the zipline broke, and he fell, like, into the crowd, right?
I think it was the ring post.
He hit one of the posts.
Yeah, he hit one of the ring posts,
Yeah.
which is probably the worst thing to
And that was live, too, right?
Yeah.
Right during a pay-per-view, they had to cut it off.
It was like the beginning of a pay-per-view.
And it was just like...
Because he was supposed to show up basically just, like, for like an appearance, like for the beginning of the show, and then they were going to continue the show, and his match was like a couple later.
Okay, that's just See, I didn't know any of that about Owen. I just know that something happened. There was an accident, and he died. And
that story that Artie just told us is a complete contradiction of the story that we've been getting for a very long time, which was, they checked all the ropes and everything, and they were fine, but some of the guys weren't comfortable with Owen wanting to do it, and apparently he was insistent about doing it, so that's a complete contradiction of that story.
Yeah, that's what why his wife wants nothing to do with WWE and being in the Hall of Fame is because he didn't want to do it in the first place.
So basically, WWE have given the Hart family plenty of reasons to just give him a real big middle finger.
Yeah.
You know, Owen's wife actually had an ongoing lawsuit with WWE for like 10 years because of that.
Yep.
Wow.
It's insane to think about some of the stuff they make them do.
All right. I want to move on. I want to ask a couple more questions.
Yeah, if we wanted to get into lawsuits with WWE,
Right.
that'd be a long list.
Yeah, a whole nother episode.
So modern wrestling,
Punk, Hogan,
modern
Sable.
wrestling to me seems to be a little more about entertainment than it used to be.
Well, yeah, it's not wrestling.
No.
It is sports entertainment. If you're watching WWE, you're not watching
And
wrestling.
it's a lot more kid friendly now.
And so
Definitely.
here's my thing.
There's less cursing.
It's PG now.
Yeah, here's my big.
There's no more beer.
Here's my big question to you two. Okay, so with the internet and the way it is, knowing the real names of all these people and knowing the backgrounds of some of these people, watching them leave and come off of what they call kayfabe. If you want to get into what kayfabe is, that's
doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Besides one
So
wrestler.
go ahead and explain what kayfabe is.
Kayfabe is basically the concept that you're not supposed to break kayfabe because kayfabe is the idea that wrestling is real.
Okay.
So you're trying to portray to the fans that this is real, like what's happening.
You're not playing a
So-
character. You're
so
being
You
here's
are
yourself.
that character.
Yeah, you are that character.
You
A
are
real
them,
quick,
you
real
know?
quick story to stay into kayfabe is back in the day, Randy Orton was a heel.
Oh yeah, and Randy Orton.
And Randy
lives
Orton
around
lives
here.
in St. Louis. So everybody that always say that, oh, I ran into Randy Orton, he's a real D-bag
Dick.
or he's an a-hole and he was super rude to us all. But that was back in the day before internet and he had to hold kayfabe.
Yeah, and,
But now-
he's supposed to hold that. But the thing is, I've run into him once. Our brother has run into him a couple times.
Our nephew
Yeah.
went to school with Randy's daughter.
Yeah.
Right. And
They were in the same class.
They were on like some. They did some after school
Yeah.
activity together or something. So they would run into each other every now and then.
Yeah.
But the one time I ran into him, I was working at the movie theater, and he came to the movie theater to watch a movie. He was a perfectly nice guy, but he was trying to just sort of like move through his stuff. I think he was trying to not have to stay in character. He just wanted to just like, I just want to get through all this as fast as I can. But he signed like one autograph for one of our managers, and he was a nice guy.
Well, and then we have a friend, Devin Lindsay.
Yeah. He
used to go into her game store all the time and buy video games from her, and she had no idea who the hell he was.
She didn't even know who she was. He was just he was a regular customer, and he was just Mr. Orton to her.
And the thing is, you could tell by the way she talks about him, he loved that because he didn't have to act like the Randy Orton.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to my real question is, with the internet and with all this stuff, has it changed wrestling for you guys?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, how has it really changed it for you guys? Now that
Negatively.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad. So
I
you guys
don't even look forward to anything anymore because you know everything that's gonna happen.
There's way too much information available to fans, casually and hardcore, and like for me, I'm way too deep down the rabbit hole. So like I'm kind of jaded, or really super jaded as a wrestling fan, to where a lot of the time if I'm watching by myself or with somebody else that's a wrestling fan, it's hard for me to enjoy it because I know that me and him, when me and Artie watch, there's a rare point in time where we're actually excited or entertained by what's happening because everything is already there. We already know, because you can hop on freaking Facebook or Google, and Google knows that I'm a wrestling fan, so they're like, hey, read this article, and, I fall down the rabbit hole, and now I know the politics and the backstage and who they want to push and all this crap.
So you learn things ahead of time through the internet. So leakage happens.
Yep.
Leaks have been happening for a long time. I remember.
Yeah, well,
I remember back in like 01. Me and my friends had websites that we would go to because sometimes people would find leaks of who's supposed to win during the upcoming pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And we would read them, and we would compare them to what actually happened to try and figure out which ones of these sources from these websites was more accurate than others. And we actually got excited about that stuff because we wanted to know which ones were accurate. But the thing is, I have a feeling there's a lot more information now than there was then. Like I said, like 01, like that's pretty early internet.
What you saw has evolved to most of it's 98% true. You don't even have to go through it anymore.
Yeah, no, there's basically like maybe one or two sources that are just completely full of shit, and then every other source has exactly what they're probably going to do.
You showed it to me one time on the internet that you saw the lineup for a WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And then on the lineup of like all the matches, they wrote off to the side who was supposed to win every match. And that was before the Mania happened.
No, actually, so I, like a year or so ago, I found the original card for WrestleMania 30 before CM Punk walked out.
Yeah.
And who was supposed to go over in all the matches and stuff like that. But, like, you can basically, right now, I don't even have to go on the internet because I already know. But, like, you could go on the internet right now and just look up, like, ooh, WrestleMania 36 card. So, you know, WrestleMania 36 is supposed to happen on April 5th. And as long as, you know, Vince McMahon remains a crazy bastard and doesn't cancel it because of coronavirus, it will happen on April 5th, Sunday, April 5th.
Well, it'll probably be Sunday, April 5th with no fans.
You can go on the internet right now and just type in WrestleMania 36 card, and it'll bring up an article that'll probably tell you everything you need to know about who's facing who and who's probably going to win and why.
So, have you seen the article that tells you who's going to face who and who wins?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you already know everything that's going to happen?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we're holding on to hope that it's false, though.
Some of it. I mean, there's some of it that we want to happen, and that's what makes us so jaded. Is sometimes they're just like, you know, there's no spoilers, or it's all spoilers. There's no surprise.
Is this episode going to be released before or after Mania?
We're gonna try to do it right around Mania.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about any of that now.
Okay, because if this was going to definitely get released after Mania, I was going to say you should say it. And we should compare and contrast after it happens.
We could give our predictions because I know.
Yeah, I could give my predictions or my what I want to happen rather than my predictions.
Well, we can do that towards the end, like as a recommendations, or towards the end, it's kind of run predictions for WrestleMania because I haven't watched in a long time.
Yeah, I don't know who's gonna. Who's gonna be on the card.
You know,
so here's the other thing.
Unless Xavier Woods is gonna be on the card, I don't know any of them.
Xavier is unfortunately injured.
Yeah. That's why you're probably seeing a lot of.
Is that why he's dressing up as Powdered Toast Man and going to?
Yeah, no, he's probably a little bit more involved in his YouTube and other escapades now because
he actually did that during his last Celebrity D&D game. He came out dressed as Powdered Toast Man from Ren and Stimpy.
And wow. Anyway, so we're gonna move on beyond that. So there's a couple other wrestling companies that have come out since WCW, and I'm going to start with the one that a while back that I don't even know if they're still doing anything.
Yes, they are. Unfortunately.
With the Octagon ring.
Yeah.
TNA. Is TNA still a thing?
TNA is now known as, it's known as Impact now, but
it's a lot of the old WCW wrestlers who didn't get picked up by WWE.
Or just really didn't want to.
Or, as Sting always says, because when he finally got picked up by WWE, he was older, but Sting was like, it just never was in the cards for him and Vince to be together.
Yeah.
I think that's all an act in his eyes, because I have a feeling that he just never liked Vince to begin with.
I think it was he didn't want to work for Vince.
So... right after WCW was purchased, or around when WCW was purchased, is about the same time that TNA began. You know, you got TNA and Ring of Honor both began in 2001.
See, I thought Ring of Honor was older than that, but I'm glad you said that because I was going to talk about them too.
But so, you know, Ring of Honor is kind of where you get your current technically proficient wrestlers that are now in WWE and elsewhere and whatnot, and then TNA is kind of like WWE Junior.
Well, it's kind of like
it became WWE Junior, and there was always aspects that it was really similar to like WCW/WWE, even from its birth, because they were pretty much like anytime they got a hold of somebody that was already relevant and known because of their career in either one of those companies, they were immediately pushed and like, oh, let's put the belt on this guy.
Right. So Sting, as an example, when Sting went to TNA, he held the belt for a long time.
Didn't TNA eventually just become Jeff Jarrett's the champion, and that's just the end of the story?
Well, Jeff Jarrett is the person responsible for TNA, so yeah, he put himself over quite a bit.
So, and that's one of the reasons why I never really got into TNA, was even though they had some wrestlers that I wanted to follow, there wasn't anything exciting actually happening.
But, alright, so...
The Dudleys ended up going over to TNA for a little bit.
Around the time...
And I think one of the Hardys did too.
WCW was purchased, they immediately started a story in WWE called The Invasion. Yeah. Where, storyline-wise, everybody knows Vince purchased WCW, but storyline-wise, his son Shane purchased it from out underneath. So, like, he led a WCW freaking fight against WWE.
Right, the storyline I talked about earlier that got me out of wrestling.
And the reason why it got you out of wrestling, and the reason why Stone Cold like switched sides and all this, is because the big deal guys from WCW were still under contract with WCW, with Turner,
right.
Even though the company had been bought out, their contracts were still under Turner. So they couldn't go and appear on WWE unless WWE bought those contracts, and they didn't. So Hogan and Sting and Hall and Nash, that's why the Invasion angle sucks so bad, because they were not legally allowed to be there.
So what you're saying is they didn't have big names, so they had to take big names and stick them over there.
It was WCW's mid-card, and people were supposed to be excited about it.
Their biggest deal in the Invasion from the WCW side was Booker T.
Yeah.
Booker T did become a big deal, though. Like, he made a name for himself.
Yeah, because there was still a little bit of the
He was
Invasion.
5-time world champion.
Well, the thing is, here's the thing is, like, Booker T to me will always be part of Harlem Heat.
Yeah.
He had a brother that he was a tag team partner with that ran the championships for a long time in WCW during the wars. So I always see Booker T, and whenever he does some of his stuff, it's all Harlem Heat moves that he used to do with his brother.
Yeah, exactly. But
like anyways, his little spinneroonie.
I think Artie wanted to say some things.
Well, it was mainly the mid-card.
Yeah.
And, then it's kind of like what WWE always does. They realize that, this Invasion sucked, so they added the mid-card from ECW, too, which nobody knew who they were.
Yeah, except for the couple of people like Rob Van Dam.
And then, of course, they had to do what they always do, and they added WWE superstars and said, I'm ECW, I'm WCW.
Yeah, you had Stone Cold switching sides, which would never happen, honestly. There was no reason to do that. But, like, another thing
honestly,
for me...
That could have worked out as a decent storyline, because Vince was on one side, and you could have had Stone Cold be just Stone Cold on the side that opposed Vince, just for the purpose of opposing Vince. That could have been a decent story.
But the thing is Vince was on the same side as Stone Cold at every point of the Invasion. When Stone Cold switched to the WCW side, Vince was also on his side. Or
honestly, I thought it was actually a really compelling story when Vince and Stone Cold were working together at the beginning, where it was like two enemies coming together to fight off this foe. And that was actually a really neat story. But when he switched over, everything just went to
Another big issue I had was it was basically like a poor version of the Monday Night Wars again, because the reason why the actual rating war worked is because they weren't like actually together clashing with each other.
Yeah, they were actually competing organizations.
Yeah, so you had, when the Invasion happened, you had stars like Rob Van Dam is supposed to be a heel.
Yeah,
that doesn't work.
No.
RVD's a freaking crowd favorite.
No, absolutely.
Always has been, always will be. You know, he couldn't be a heel at that point in time. There's plenty of people on the WCW, ECW side that people weren't gonna boo, or there were people on the WWE side that people weren't gonna cheer, because WWE was supposed to be the good guys that were being invaded by the bad guys in WCW. You know, and you had all kinds of just who's heel, who's babyface. It doesn't matter anymore, and it was crap.
All right, so back to TNA.
And then, yeah.
Do we have to?
Well, I want to touch on it quickly because I
am kind of curious. Is TNA still doing things?
Yes.
Yes. Like you said, they're
are any of these things important?
They're actually doing some pretty... Their world champion right now is a female.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which has never happened before.
Is she good?
Yes. Well, she's a little bit of a freaking a drama queen, and she's very, very into herself in real life. Like, people don't like her because she kind of a bitch. You know.
That's the one you're gonna spell out.
Whatever.
He dropped like 2 F-bombs, and he's gonna spell out bitch.
She kind of a bitch. How's that?
There you go. So, I just wanted to talk.
The reason
why I'm talking about TNA, because I'm going to move forward to like Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Like how you said that the Ring of Honor is like some of the bigger companies like WWE are picking up talent out of Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
So Daniel Bryan, I know, came from Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of too many other names, but I know there's a ton of them.
There's a bunch. Yeah.
There's a ton that have moved up.
Probably. I would say the 2 biggest stars in WWE that are former Ring of Honor alumni are Daniel Bryan and Seth Rollins.
Seth Rollins, that's right. I mean, but then you also picked up people who are no longer in WWE that have moved on, like what's his name? He was part of the group with Seth Rollins and
Dean was not from.
Dean wasn't from Ring of Honor. I thought he.
No, he's
CZW. He kind of wasn't really known to be specific to one federation.
Okay, and he did a lot of Japan though too, right? No,
that was
just Daniel.
Now he's doing that now.
Okay.
As Jon Moxley again, but he was CZW, which is basically like ECW on freaking crack.
Backyard wrestling.
It's backyard wrestling.
Okay.
They hit each other with freaking light tubes, like you go to a freaking
fluorescent lights.
Fluorescent lights, weed eaters. You know, I've seen Jon Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose. Literally, somebody took a freaking like a sawzall and like on his forehead. Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
Yeah, so it is.
Holy cow!
Woo, yeah, I don't like watching that stuff because I actually want to see like wrestlers have careers, not like I don't want them to just wrestle for 5 minutes. Like and that's the thing.
Their career achievement card is just a series of injuries.
If you're gonna go big, why are you going big in front of 12 people?
Yeah.
Like there was a guy.
I don't know. Ask ECW.
There was a guy like I think it was like a year ago. He did a 450 off of the top rope to the outside of the ring through a table, and he over rotated. And basically, only his legs hit the guy on the table, and then just bow, and he cracked his skull open on the concrete.
And wasn't it just like a gymnasium?
I had never heard of this guy before in my entire life, and now the biggest claim to fame that he has is because he's cracked his skull open in front of 15 people.
And he did it in like a basement or a gymnasium or something. It was like on a concrete floor or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
I always think of Ring of Honor as like you get your name built in Ring of Honor, and then if you become really good and really popular.
How big of a thing is Ring of Honor?
It's not as big now because everybody started their own company now.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get to that one in a second because I know a lot of Ring of Honor went over to that federation too. I'm working my way.
So I'm also kind of curious about. You mentioned Japanese wrestling, and pro wrestling is huge in Japan.
New Japan wrestling,
massive. Yeah.
You know, so like, how much of that affects pro wrestling in the States? Do people come over from Japan? Do people go from the U.S. to Japan?
There are a couple.
There's a lot more of people from the U.S. and from Canada and Mexico and even Europe and the United Kingdom that will go to Japan than there is.
But not a whole lot coming out of Japan.
There are a couple instances, and honestly, I would say the people that go to Japan learn more and become better and have more success than the people that leave Japan to come here.
And sadly, they're more accepted than when Japan stars come over here.
And
because I'm telling you, there's a couple of Japanese wrestlers that I know that are in WWE now. I think are phenomenal, and just not getting the pushes they need.
There's of course the greatest pro wrestler of all time, Kazushi Sakuraba, who is also the best MMA fighter of all time, and no one ever knows his name.
Yeah.
But he got me into looking at pro wrestling in Japan for a little while there years ago, because he went from pro wrestling in Japan to doing mixed martial arts, and he was in Pride. And he got declared the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world for a little while. And he was like a middleweight, fighting like heavyweights and light heavyweights and doing all like open weight championship
professional wrestling
tournaments and
combat sports is basically sacred in Japan.
And he was doing the open weight tournaments, and his declared fighting style in mixed martial arts was professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. He took himself as seriously as one could. If they said that their mixed martial art was professional wrestling, he would come out in masks with fireworks, and no one else was doing that in mixed martial arts. But he was doing it. He would take his mask off, like do his crowd pleasing, and then he would go to work. And he was a master in a mixed martial arts ring.
Which is very rare, because, I mean, look at the couple people who tried to go over to UFC from WWE.
You kind of have to be a freak to actually succeed if you're going from professional wrestling to MMA. And that's why, you've seen, Batista tried it, CM Punk tried it, Bobby Lashley tried it.
Brock Lesnar made a good run of it, but you can tell in his couple first early fights, his technical work is terrible.
Yeah.
He eventually got good at it, but once he got hurt, he was done.
Right.
He tried a couple more fights after that, but he was done.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to give Brock
Ken
a little bit
Shamrock was basically done after he did professional wrestling too.
Yeah.
He tried to go back to mixed martial arts and he couldn't do it.
To give Brock a little bit of a
he had a bad injury. It was a bad injury.
Not that. That's not what I'm talking about. It's like he was a collegiate wrestler before he became a professional wrestler.
This is true. His stand-up work was where he was bad.
Yeah.
His groundwork was top notch.
He could honestly destroy anybody because he was an NCAA Division I champion 2 years in a row.
And you can see it when he won the UFC championship the first time. You can see the first round and a half. He is panicked. He's trying to stand up with this guy. He can't do it.
Was it when he fought Couture?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's trying to stand up with this guy. He's trying to show everyone that he can do it, and he can't. And eventually he just goes, screw it, let's wrestle. And he wins in the next, 30 seconds.
Well, he just got a lucky shot on Couture.
His first fight with Frank Mir?
No. His first ever UFC fight was with Heath Herring in Japan.
Right.
And he punched him, and Heath Herring went flying backwards. And then Lesnar chased after him and just pounded his face in the ground.
Yeah.
Frank Mir was his first ever UFC fight.
Right, okay.
And then he lost, then beat him, and then got a title shot.
Yeah, that was
a big deal.
Yeah. Well, and Couture was underweight anyway because Couture at the time was fighting a weight class above where he should have been, and holding a belt that he shouldn't have technically been holding.
Yeah,
we've gone.
Couture is definitely more of a light heavyweight.
But anyway, so we're going to
question.
Sure.
Is MMA like fake like wrestling?
No.
Okay. Cool.
That's why it was a huge deal. Honestly, you say what you want about his actual skill. The fact that Brock Lesnar won the UFC championship is not fake.
No, and he held it for a little bit too.
That, and he did it in less than a year.
But he didn't really fight his way up. They gave him a shot because he had a name.
You're right. He did.
Well, and he held it for a few fights after that, didn't he?
I think he had 2 successful.
Yeah, I think it was either 2 or 3 successful defenses. Then he got his injury, which it was a kick or a hook, something that hit him in the side and perforated his intestines.
Yeah,
which caused him to need to go into. He went to surgery. He got a piece of intestines removed. He got injured again in his next fight because it ruptured again, and he tried one more fight, I think, after that, but he just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be hard because you can't take body shots at that point.
Brock also
and you can tell that first fight when he came back, all he's doing, he's defending his side. He can't do a whole lot. Right. So yeah. I was actually glad for him when he went back to professional wrestling because
safer.
It's safer. It's not exactly a safe profession, but it's safer than what he was doing.
And
go ahead.
That's one of the arguments that Brock made. I think it was around WrestleMania 31 or so. There was rumors that Brock was leaving WWE again to go back to UFC, and then after WrestleMania he stayed, and he was asked why in interviews, like why'd you stay, and he's just like, I got to make smarter decisions.
Well, it wasn't really about that. I don't know if you want to go into it or not, but he failed a drug test in his last fight, and he would be suspended for 2 years, but he would have to enter that pool again.
Right.
Because without serving his suspension, because as soon as he got popped for it, he went to WWE, so he got removed from that pool of getting drug tested over and over again.
But, I'm not really sure. Him making good decisions is something he would want to do with his life, because based on his actual behavior in the UFC and outside of professional wrestling, he seems like the kind of guy who has an excessively short fuse.
Oh, he is.
He does not seem like the kind of guy who goes, I'm going to do this because it seems like a smart decision. He seems like the kind of guy who goes, I'm going to do this because shut the hell up.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's the reason why Brock left WWE the first time and went, well, first of all, he tried to do football again. Yeah. And he was the last person cut by the Vikings before the season started.
Well, okay, so
and then he went to UFC, and the reason why he did it is because this is just a challenge, something I want to try this. I want to see how I do.
As a UFC fighter, he wasn't going to make as much money as he was as a WWE superstar.
I think he'd make more. UFC took off, and their purses are way more than what wrestlers make.
Yeah,
exactly. not the top.
Well, Lesnar got brought in as the top because he made Dana White so much money that
if you compare the top UFC fighters versus the top WWE wrestlers.
Well, that just goes in the fact that UFC fighters
especially at the time
2 or 3 matches every 6 months, and at that time you're right.
But if you want to talk now, maybe they're closer, but that's because a lot of your excessively high paid professional wrestlers are kind of out doing something else, and UFC is bigger than it was at the time. So it's more of a leveling, but at the time that he went and did it, he was getting probably paid less.
Well, that's the thing about people don't really realize, unless you're John Cena, you're lucky if you make $500,000 a year in WWE.
Yeah.
They're the top of the top. Like one of the top tag teams got offered $1 million a year to stay.
Right,
and they declined it, and that's big. Like getting $1 million is huge.
And right now, because of we haven't really talked about this a lot yet, but there is actually another company that is competing with
my
WWE
next question
right
when we get
back on topic.
I was talking
when we get out of our tangent. That was going to be my next question.
But anyways, I want to continue what we were talking about before with TNA and Ring of Honor. Is right now they're in a state of fluctuation as far as popularity goes. I would say people aren't very interested in either one. Although TNA for the last I would say 4 years have actually been doing some pretty entertaining and good stuff, but they only really have a niche kind of following. The people that would rather watch that than anything else or whatever, that kind of thing, or the people that just want to watch wrestling all the freaking time. But the thing is, there is a lot of content now. There's a lot of different companies everywhere in Canada and US and UK.
The one thing I've noticed, I don't know if it's because hang out with you guys more often, but I've noticed a lot more of the smaller wrestling. Even in the area, obviously the school you went to, they talk about.
There's what 2 or 3 decently sized professional wrestling organizations in the St. Louis area.
Yeah.
I want to say at least 3 that I can think of, and that's the one you went to, which was Harley Race.
Yeah. There's
Dynamo
Pro, and then there's one other that I can't think of. Glory Pro.
And
those are the 3 that I can think of.
Yeah, and they all 3 of them have actual academies where you can be trained. But at one point, TNA especially was doing really well. I would say from the point of like mid 2000 decade, like about 2004 to like 2010, they were doing pretty well, where they had a good amount of following and viewership, and honestly their content wasn't half bad either, because you had an alternative. They were the alternative to WWE at that point.
Yeah, so if you
now they're like the substitute alternative. Same with Ring of Honor. They were a substitute, or they were an alternative. Now they're kind of like the substitute alternative.
So we'll get it, now that we've said that, we're going to get into the big other company that I think is doing a really good job of competing with WWE.
Right.
It's a new company called AEW.
Right. So
a little bit of history from either one of you guys. I don't care who says it, but like the history of how it was started.
You're the AEW guy.
Well, there was a humongous faction that was pretty much the newer generation's NWO, which was the Bullet Club, and they blew up in Japan, and from being so popular in Japan, it moved over to the United States. And
so there is people in Japan coming over.
Yeah, but these were Americans.
Yeah, so the thing about
they went
the
over
Bullet
to Japan
Club
first.
Yeah. The thing about the Bullet Club is they were all foreigners in Japan.
Yes.
Hardly
anybody in the Bullet Club has ever been Japanese.
And as we all know, Japanese people love white folk.
Yeah.
So is this like wrestling but anime?
No.
But it came over to the U.S. and everybody's starting to like it.
Yeah,
it's wrestling but with Pocky.
Yeah, sure.
They brought promos to Japan.
Yeah, they basically became like the heel faction in Japan, where they're sitting there speaking English to the crowd and getting
so
heat and
throw
and
a few
stuff
names
like that.
out of who's in the Bullet Club.
The Young Bucks, Luke Gallows, Carl Anderson, Kenny Omega, AJ Styles.
Right. So
that last one is the only one I really recognize.
It started with
and then what's his name?
There wasn't an actual like leader of the Bullet Club, but the first actual leader of the Bullet Club is Finn Balor / Prince Devitt.
Yeah, I was about to say Balor.
His name, and like they became like just hella heels. I mean, they were like NWO again. They were doing despicable things, and they didn't care about rules and all this, and they were getting over in a big time, to the point where Finn started to get noticed by WWE.
Right.
And so he left New Japan and came to WWE. And at the time, AJ Styles, TNA's #1 guy, was F this company. I'm getting out of here because it was turning into shit. And so AJ came to New Japan and became the new leader. And that really catapulted the group from just kind of like a really good heel faction to a main event heel faction. Because AJ Styles is a world-class competitor. And Finn is too, but he wasn't at that level yet.
He didn't have the name.
He wasn't there already when it began.
Yeah. So when AJ Styles left TNA, he was already a main eventer.
Yeah.
So when he moved over to
New Japan... That probably explains why I know his name.
Yeah, so AJ Styles became their champion, their main champion. the faction continued to gain momentum. You had more people joining in. You know, it was getting bigger, and then you know you got Kenny Omega is now part of it, and there's some people that know who he is.
The Bullet Club came over from Japan and formed the AEW, or
sort of. They had to drop. Bullet Club's still going on in Japan.
Yeah.
But when they came over here, they just were like the Elite, and then that's what started all Elite Wrestling, which is AEW.
So yeah, basically what happened was certain people in the Bullet Club kind of they became like sub factions of the Bullet Club.
Yeah.
You know, and then there was like Civil War, and essentially it became a point where like, okay, only one of these is actually the Bullet Club, and one of them is just they called themselves the Elite, which is the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes.
Well, see, I was about to bring up Cody. So Cody Rhodes was a WWE wrestler that I always found entertaining in the ring.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
Also, his brother Dustin, otherwise known as Goldust.
Yeah.
If we could have just gotten him rid of the Goldust persona, I think Dustin would have been a phenomenal name in wrestling.
He was in TNA, and he was actually decent.
That was the plan for him. Yeah. You know, he was in WCW before in the 90s and 80s.
Yes, he was. And he was just Dustin.
The natural Dustin Rhodes.
Rhodes, right.
He
was phenomenal.
And honestly, in my opinion, and you know, you can agree or disagree with this, in my opinion, Dustin is the best wrestler of the Rhodes.
I'm with you on that. I'm okay with that.
He was always my favorite.
I do like I said, I do like Cody, but I just remember seeing, like, after being awoken, I'm going to say this in a way, it sounds kind of weird, and it is true, but
smartened up is how
when I was shown wrestling in a different light, not just looking at the stories and the soap opera of what wrestling is, and just looking at the technique and the technical styles of wrestlers, Goldust to me was phenomenal. He knew how to sell. He knew how to do moves. He was charismatic. He knew how to tell a story in the ring without speaking a word.
Right.
And do I feel like he got screwed over in WWE? Probably.
Yeah, well, anyways,
he hated that character, but he embraced it for the sake of being there.
Yeah, because there was nothing else for him to do.
But you know, and that's kind of what started this. Is there's actually a point in WWE when Cody was still there. He was kind of part of like the anti-authority thing that they were doing at the time. You know, where it was kind of like the Stone Cold thing all over again.
Right.
But you know, they were pushing down certain people storyline wise,
right?
You know, and Cody was one of them. And Cody got fired on Raw one time. You know, he had a match with Randy, and if he lost, he got fired. And Cody actually said in the back, you know, like, you know what, you know, you guys have mistreated the Rhodes name this entire time. When Dusty Rhodes, the freaking American Dream, came over, you dressed him up in black and yellow polka dots and did all this with him and blah blah blah, and then you put my brother in a gimp suit, you know, and it basically, he kind of said, you guys treated this name, this family, like crap.
And they were a huge name in wrestling. Like, I remember watching that pay-per-view where freaking Dusty, before he passed away, came out and freaking ripped his belt off and was hitting people over the head with the buckle on his belt. That was awesome. Yeah. I was like, oh my god.
And that actually started that storyline that, you know, this promo here and him getting fired and that brought Goldust in to try and fight for his brother's job back. And then he lost too, so neither of them had a job. And then Dusty was like, how about if we beat your boys in a tag team match? Well, we get the job back and we get their titles, and then, you know, so they became a tag team.
So
but eventually,
a lot of stuff happened with Cody at that point.
Cody, through teaming with his brother, ended up basically getting thrown into that gimmick too.
Yeah,
Goldust. He became Stardust, which it was just ridiculous. And like pretty much everybody felt like Cody was above that crap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I feel
it was bad enough that they did it to Dustin.
If they had done that smart, they could have used that as a good way to get Dustin out of the Goldust persona.
Agreed.
But they did the exact opposite.
They did the opposite. Yeah, and that's what basically created their competition today. Is they put Cody in that gimmick, and they didn't have any plans for him to leave that gimmick at any time.
So that caused Cody to want to leave.
Yeah, so he left.
So that's a little bit of backstory with Cody that I know.
Yeah.
And Cody teamed up with the Elite.
Yeah, Cody joined the Bullet Club, and then the Elite was basically formed from there between the Young Bucks.
So Cody went to Japan and wrestled too?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay, see, I didn't know that either. That's really
Cody
weird.
went. So when Cody first left, it was actually awesome.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's still awesome. I freaking love Cody Rhodes, but when he first left, and he was a free agent for a while, to where he was just wrestling anywhere against anybody that they would allow him to, while still being a free agent and not signing anywhere.
He'd sign that one match contract
to wrestle with certain people because. Essentially, as soon as he was released and able to compete outside of WWE again, he put a list on Twitter of people that he wanted to face that he hadn't gotten to because they're not in WWE, and he'd been in WWE for a while. So he went to TNA to wrestle Kurt Angle, fantastic match. He went to Japan to wrestle against a bunch of different people. He went everywhere to wrestle these names on his list. And then after that happened, he joined the Bullet Club, and the Elite was formed, and then, basically they separated themselves from the Bullet Club.
AEW started not as a true federation, though, right?
No.
It was actually, they just did a pay-per-view.
It was a bet.
It was a challenge. Somebody did, somebody...
Really?
They told... I don't remember who it was.
It was Dave Meltzer said that it wouldn't sell, and they couldn't sell out a stadium, so they said bet, and they sold it out within 5 minutes?
Yeah, they said that there wasn't an indie show that could sell out a stadium.
Here's the other question that I had, and I know that part of what it was became AEW, but Global Force, that was something that
was mainly TNA right off, so Jeff Jarrett started.
Jeff Jarrett, it went to TNA.
Yeah.
Well, it was Jeff Jarrett lost his ownership in TNA, so he went to try to start this, which it failed miserably.
I knew that. I just thought that they kind of piggybacked with AEW, became part of what AEW was.
No, not at all.
So how long has AEW been around now?
Not even a year yet.
Not even a year. And how big is it becoming? Is it like
it's on TNT?
Is it actually becoming like a honest to God competitor for the WWE?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
So is the WWE making like obvious changes to how they're doing things in response to this?
Immediate changes.
Yes, they're signing people for long-term contracts now. They're trying to beg people to stay.
To continue the history, they did the show where it was a bet that they couldn't sell it out. They announced the show, funded it with their own money, like Cody and the Bucks.
Tony Khan too.
Tony Khan, the owner of the. What is it, the Panthers?
Jaguars.
Damn, sorry. I don't watch sports.
The owner of the sports.
Yeah.
The guy who owns sports.
Owner of a sports ball
team. They
team.
funded the show. It sold out basically immediately. They did it in Chicago, and it was amazing. Yeah. And then they were like, okay, let's do this again.
Yeah, they said, let's do a second one.
Sold out again. Yeah. And then from there, it became apparent that, like, okay, let's just start our own federation. Why not? Let's compete with WWE and get some of the guys that are in other federations to come over to us.
The guys who have been kind of alienated.
AEW stands for what? All Elite Wrestling?
Yeah. Right. And it was a joke. until it got announced that Chris Jericho signed with them. And then they said, "Oh crap, this is for real."
Oh yeah,
because
Chris Jericho's always said for the longest time he will never sign with a different federation, never sign with different. Next thing you know, he's signing with AEW.
He was a WWE guy. Well, so it all was because of Kenny Omega and Cody.
Yeah.
It comes down to those two for me. So Kenny Omega became the leader of the Bullet Club after AJ left and went to WWE. Because everybody wanted AJ to go to WWE. He had been the best wrestler to never be in WWE at that point, and probably a lot of people still believe he's the best in the world.
Oh yeah.
Who, AJ?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But Kenny became the leader of the Bullet Club after he left, and people were starting to argue, no, AJ's not the best in the world. Kenny's the best in the world. Because the way they built him was amazing in New Japan, to where their John Cena, basically, Kazuchika Okada, you know, he did a 2-year story with Kenny to where Kenny couldn't beat him. And then Kenny did beat him, and it was a huge deal. Everybody, throughout that entire story, people were like, no, they started calling Kenny the best bout machine, you know, like, just all over the place. And, like, Dave Meltzer started freaking riding his D. You know, he got their first match together was at Wrestle Kingdom 12,
I think
11 or 12, which is like New Japan's WrestleMania. They do it in the Tokyo Dome. You know, they had their match for the World Championship to where it was like 50 minutes long, like 55 minutes long, and it was just a freaking classic, amazing match. And they booked Kenny like the hero of New Japan, and he still didn't win, you know. But Okada won that match, correct? Okay, so yeah, Okada still won, and then they had a rematch, and it was a tie, and then another rematch, and it was a tie, and then they did a tournament to determine, you know, who would face the champion again at the next Wrestle Kingdom, and Kenny actually beat Okada in the tournament. So like, it's like a round robin tournament where everybody competes in it, even the champion. And points are accumulated, and the winner of this tournament is called the G1 Climax. Faces the champion at Wrestle Kingdom in the main event, and Kenny beat Okada in that tournament, but the title wasn't on the line. Yeah. You know, and it was like, okay, so they're continuing to build this story. He didn't win the tournament, though, so it kind of got dragged out even longer and whatnot. And then Kenny eventually beat him for the title. And it was another long, long match. And all of those matches broke the scale on ratings. Every single one of them. There had never been a star rating over 5 stars. For any match. All 3 of them were above 5 stars.
Wow.
And just to preface how often a 5-star match even happens in the United States, hardly ever.
I think that tag team match just recently on AEW got 5 stars.
Right.
But that
and now it's more common, but at that point, like, there wasn't very often that you see matches even get 5 stars anywhere, let alone in America.
So we're gonna move it forward. So AEW was created. And is now competing against WWE. Mm-hmm. So with that, it brings us up to modern times.
Yep.
So real quickly, I don't have any idea what's going to happen, so I'm not going to throw anything out there. Tim has no idea what's going on, so we're not going to throw anything out there. Do you guys have any predictions that you want to throw out there for WrestleMania? And see if we can maybe check our predictions compared to what actually happens.
Okay, yeah, I'm down with that. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of what the card is.
So, champion. Who's the champion right now in Raw?
On Raw, Brock Lesnar is the WWE champion.
Who is he fighting?
He is facing Drew McIntyre, who won the Royal Rumble in January.
That's right. Okay.
It's probably going to be the actual main event of the show. And right now, I would absolutely love for Drew to win.
But what do you think is going to happen?
Drew's going to win.
Yeah, same here.
Do you think
that's my prediction? They have the opportunity.
The champion on SmackDown.
Goldberg.
Oh, I forgot that happened.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Yes. Goldberg is the Universal Champion, or basically SmackDown's world title holder.
SmackDown's world title. So who's he facing?
Roman Reigns.
Are you kidding me? What happened to The Fiend?
The Fiend lost the title. Yeah. All right, so they've been doing these Saudi shows, which is just,
blood money.
Vince is trying to get blood money so he can pay for the XFL. Yeah. And they do just absolutely crappy things at these shows because they're trying to make the Saudi crowd happy, and they're just a bunch of idiots, honestly.
They don't know much about.
They don't know anything about wrestling. They want to see Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan. Andre dead.
They called for Yokozuna.
Yeah, they were trying. They want to see stars from 20 years ago that don't exist anymore. But anyways,
Goldberg came out and won.
The Fiend, who they've been building for like an entire year, is this unstoppable monster, got squashed by Goldberg at Saudi Arabia in 2 minutes.
What's your prediction? Reigns is gonna end up taking the belt?
I hope so.
My prediction is that. Reigns.
Are they playing Goldberg off as a heel right now? Or?
No, he's a face. And
is Reigns the heel, or is it a face v face?
This is just a face versus face dream match, but I don't know who's dreaming about that other than Vince McMahon.
So women's title on Raw.
It's Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler.
Wait, they split the women's championship?
Yeah. There's one on SmackDown and one on Raw, and there's a tag team division.
Well, I'm not even getting the tag team. I'm just gonna do the main champion. So
Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler has already been made official.
Okay, so
WrestleMania.
Do you think Becky Lynch, is gonna keep the title?
No.
Yes, in a certain way, but I don't know if you want. Ronda Rousey's gonna come out and screw them both.
Becky's a huge name these days.
So Ronda's coming back.
I know who the hell she is.
But the thing is
Ronda coming back? Because she got hurt or something, didn't she?
No, she wanted to start a family, which I don't know if that happened or not.
Yeah, well, there's rumors now that Ronda's going to be involved in the match in some way. Yeah. But my prediction is that Becky will not be champion for very much longer, whether or not she wins at WrestleMania or not.
Okay. So the women's champion on SmackDown.
They haven't
announced the match, and honestly, I don't know what it's gonna be.
Who's the champion?
Bayley. And I'm not.
That's heel Bayley too, isn't it?
And I can't express to you how little I care about SmackDown right now.
Okay. So we're not gonna go into that. So those are the predictions for the 4 championships, even though there isn't a prediction for Bayley.
Well,
and
hold
her
on
champion.
now. There's more. So now they have women's Royal Rumble match too, not just a men's Royal Rumble match where the winner gets to face for whatever title they want. And for the first time ever, Charlotte Flair is challenging the NXT Women's Champion for her title, which is going to take place.
I forgot to even talk about NXT. It's its own brand now.
Yeah. And that's going to happen. Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley for the NXT Championship.
Okay, and then there's an NXT Men's Champion.
But that's not going to be on Mania.
They won't do anything on Mania for NXT.
The Women's Championship in NXT is on the Mania card, but the Men's Championship is not going to be.
So are they going to even do any NXT stuff at Mania?
What else is going to be on Mania?
Right now, there's The Fiend versus John Cena.
Yeah.
They're not doing like tag team championships or.
Well, they probably
just haven't announced everything yet, and this isn't like 1990 where they actually build and announce things. Okay, it's gonna be like. It's gonna be
slapdash.
It's gonna be 2 days before we're gonna get announced for our tag team matches.
So I hate to do this and cut us because I know we could talk for another hour if we wanted to.
Anyways, my prediction is Charlotte Flair is gonna win the NXT Women's Championship.
Rhea Ripley.
Wow. Anyway, so we're gonna cut it there. We've been talking for a while about wrestling. Like I said, we could probably sit. Well, I know these two could sit for another hour.
Are there things we can recommend?
Actually, yes. I have a recommendation for Tim, even though we didn't talk about any of the things he asked me last week, and I know he probably doesn't remember them.
I don't remember any of it.
Last week he asked me some questions regarding like why they did a brand split and all this and
oh yeah, we didn't get into any of that.
Watch the Ruthless Aggression show on the WWE Network. I know you don't have the WWE Network. If you want, you can have my my passwords and stuff if you're interested. But that would be my recommendation. Watch that because they highlight a lot of great stuff in there and they answer a lot of questions that you had for me last week.
Do you have any recommendations on like maybe something that might possibly push somebody into watching wrestling again? Maybe an old fan or
watch indie wrestling. Don't watch the new product.
Don't watch WWE. Yeah. Watch the smaller stuff.
Yes.
ROH. AEW.
Because what happened with me is I watched indie wrestling and then all of a sudden I see certain people in the higher stuff like WWE and I see the people I was 5 feet from being stars. So to get you to watch it.
So for me, for those of you guys who are still listening to this, I'm going to tell you right now, go see a local show. Whether for here in St. Louis, whether it's to go see, what do they call that?
WLW.
WLW.
World League Wrestling in Troy. And I mean, they kind of
and then they
move
have
around. So
World League Wrestling here in our area. They also have Dynamo Pro
is kind of more down in St. Louis. As well as,
and then the
Glory Pro is
also in St. Louis. Go see a local. Go support your local wrestling schools. Just go see a show, because trust me, the 1 or 2 shows that I saw where Devin was still in school, he didn't wrestle, but I went down and saw what they had. It's a lot better than watching the stuff on TV.
It's fantastic to see kids work their asses off. And like for me as a passionate wrestling fan, I know that the people I'm watching are passionate because they're right there in front of me.
So
and they're
with that, it's a smaller venue. You can see really close. You're like basically up on the rink. But anyway, with all that, we're gonna go ahead and say goodbye. So I will say my talk to you later.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
Wash your hands. No coronavirus.
Talk a bunch of other paper.
I hope it's done.